From Chicago, welcome to 3Degrees Discussions. I'm your host, Mike Vasquez. This is a podcast devoted to the stories behind the innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders in the 3D printing industry.
I first saw it in my private life. A buddy of mine bought a 3D printer, one of the early filament printers. I don't even know what thing it was, but I was amazed to see how something built up out of scratch. And we've been sitting there drinking beer, watching the printer, talking about God and the world, and it was mesmerizing. And to this day, I like looking into the printer, especially the SLS printer. It's still magic.
That's Patrick Kuballa. Patrick is a senior formulator for Tiger Coatings in Austria. He spent the last several years developing, testing, and commercializing new polymers for additive manufacturing in both the laser powder-bed fusion space as well as the composites industry. Before we get started, head over to www.3degreescompany.com and subscribe to the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the show anywhere you download your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or Stitcher. Also, if you or your company are looking for materials, qualification, or general additive manufacturing support, reach out to the team through our website or via email at info@3degreescompany.com. All right, Patrick, thank you so much for joining the show today. I'm excited for the conversation. We've known each other for a number of years now, so excited to introduce kind of your story to the audience. So like all the other episodes that we do, I like to start out at the very beginning. So where were you born? Kind of what was growing up like? What kind of got you on the path towards working in engineering and manufacturing?
Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to talk to you in this episode. So I was born in Germany in a small town called Aalen. And as my whole family started with chemistry, I had to do it on my own as well, and started to work in chemistry at the BASF coatings. And afterwards, I thought, hey, this is very cool to know more about polymeric engineering. So I started to study that. And after I was done studying, I thought, hey, where can I work next? And had some job offers, and one of them were in Austria. So I haven't been to Austria. So I thought to myself, what's a better opportunity to know the country and the people than to live there? And I thought it would be an episode of 2 to 3 years, but now I'm here 9 years, working first in the coatings sector, and as my company Tiger Coatings started with additive manufacturing, I wanted to be part of it because I like these new innovative stuff and get to know the technology and how it all worked out. And right now I'm in the development of Thermoset SLS materials.
Awesome. And so kind of going back to kind of your early days, did you like chemistry, or like you had some family members that did it? Like what was there anything specific that drew you to it? Like, and also, I mean, like, is it I only have the experience in the American system where you kind of do elementary, middle school, high school. You don't really pick anything until you get to college. Was that a similar experience for you?
We couldn't pick it either, but as my family comes off the chemistry sector, I was quite confident with that. So I had fun with it, and as I was a child, my dad did some magic shows with chemicals at home at my birthdays. So then I was kind of hooked to chemistry. So I looked forward doing chemistry on my own, and yeah.
And a lot of times when when we're talking to people about manufacturing, and certainly people that aren't living and breathing it every day like ourselves, like we kind of take for granted what does it mean to work in some of these big companies like BASF and Tiger to a certain extent. Do you want to kind of maybe describe kind of what your initial impressions were of going to work in the chemical space versus kind of what the reality was, and kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis?
What first caught my eye in the chemistry sector was the high safety standards, which is obvious because you work with it and you want to don't have damage because of working with the chemicals. And this caught my eye in the beginning, and during my first work at the BASF, I got to know all the safety parameters, and yeah, I lost track of what I wanted to say.
Did you have a particular industry? I know you say kind of chemical, but like there's so many, like BASF, wasn't their tagline where like we're in everything you make, or so? I can't remember the exact one, but like you don't know a lot of things we make, but we're in everything. It was in the 90s or in the early 2000s. I had like something along those lines. But did you have a sense of what like any particular industry that drew your eye, automotive or oil and gas or anything like that? Was there like a specific pull, or did you just kind of like the field of like, hey, like this is kind of a like I can apply myself in a lot of different types of applications through this company?
In both of these companies, I had the chance to work in many different sectors because coatings are used also in automotive sector, aerospace, beverages, etc. And in the beginning, it was giving these parts a new lifetime, a new color, that people more appreciate what they are looking at, or what they are holding, or what they are driving, and so on. This is till that day one of my passions, and now I've got the opportunity to go more into the additive manufacturing sector, which has other advantages. You can create something out of scrap. You just need the material, the printer, and you need to know what you want to print. And afterwards, you can still applicate some coatings on it as well. So this is where these two technologies merge.
And where was your first interaction with 3D printing? Was it with like in your personal life and professional life? Where did you first see it?
I first saw it in my private life. A buddy of mine bought a 3D printer, one of the early filament printers. I don't even know what thing it was, but I was amazed to see how something built up out of scratch. And we've been sitting there drinking beer, watching the printer, talking about God and the world, and it was mesmerizing. And to this day, I like looking into the printer, especially the SLS printer. It's still magic, and I can watch it a long time.
And did you know when you were transitioning from BASF to Tiger that you were going to be working on additive manufacturing, or did that something kind of come up naturally in what you were working on?
This came up because Tiger Coating started 4 to 5 years ago with additive manufacturing, because they have seen that additive manufacturing is a great potential market, and then Tiger started with a new team to work on this field, and I wanted to be part of it, so I got the job to work on that. And right now, as Tiger comes from from the powder coating industry, where the binders are thermosetting materials, we have started to develop thermoset materials for SLS application. And I liked the challenge to see if it's possible to bring something this specific to the market.
And so along those lines, maybe just give a little bit of background on Tiger for those who may not be aware. So you mentioned a little bit about the kind of historically in the coatings business, but maybe explain kind of a little bit more about that and kind of what the technology is, like how does powder coating work versus a lot of the audience may be familiar with more of the 3D printing side, but may not be as familiar with powder coating.
So Tiger started with powder coating in the 60s, roundabout, and the technology is quite different to liquid coatings, because there you have solvents, and then you spray it on what you want to coat. But with powder coatings, this is a solvent-free technology, so you have a powder and you applicate it by electrical charging of the powder, and the powder flies to the substrate you want to coat, and then you just cure it like some other solvent-based coatings, and afterwards you have your solid coating on your substrate.
And with that, is it in it's a powder form, correct? That's what kind of the main feedstock is for powder coating. And essentially, what's the kind of particle size that we're talking about for typical powder coating materials?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on the application, but you're there between 30 to 150 micrometers. So wide range. It depends on where you put the powder coating on.
But in terms of SLS, it's kind of in that window, right? Like you've got kind of the ability. And so as Tiger's exploring the technology, kind of you're on the team, kind of tasked to build that out. And Thermosets was a big target kind of given the history of the company, what you guys were good at, what was in your kind of resin portfolio and library. So again, maybe just kind of letting in the audience on some more of the technical stuff. Maybe explain a little bit of what is a thermoset, how's it compared to a thermoplastic, and what are some of the advantages of using that in industrial applications.
So the thermoplastic materials that you can see right now on the market for SLS, if you bring it into the shape and you heat it afterwards, after a specific temperature, it will melt again and you can reform it. The thermosetting resins or materials are connecting because of chemical bonds. This means that they are more temperature stable and has some other mechanical characteristics than the thermoplastic materials. The production of these materials are partially similar. You need an extruder to compound your materials. You need a mill to get the fine materials that you can afterwards put into your printer. So there we had quite some good good basis here at Tiger Coatings. Also, the know-how of the chemistries of the thermosetting materials that played in our hands. So we just need to focus on these characteristics we need for SLS printing instead of powder coating. And then we could do some trials and see this works not. Then we had to know why it doesn't work and what we can do, do better for the next trials. And this is how we got step to this position where we are now, where we say we have materials that are good enough for the market, that have advantages instead of other materials, and get some value to the customer.
And so maybe walk me through the process of kind of changes within a thermoset material in a SLS process. So typically you'd have like a nylon 12, nylon 11. It melts around 190, let's call it. And so the laser melts it, the area or that specific layer, more powder goes on top, you melt that layer, and you kind of keep going until the part's done, and then it all cools down and everything's kind of at an elevated temperature. With a thermoset, I imagine you don't want to get, like, there's a delicate balance, right? Or you have to have some sort of other mechanism you need it to melt, but if it cures, you got a big problem in your SLS machine, right? And so thermal balancing, or however you want to cure it, is a little bit less straightforward, maybe, to say than like a PA, than a typical thermoplastic in PA12 and in SLS. So maybe just walk us through, like, how does it actually work? Like, how do you get a thermoset out in an SLS system?
Yeah, basically the steps are more or less the same. We have a preheating step, but the printing happens not at 160 to 250 degrees, depending on the material, but at 60 to 80 degrees because of our thermosetting materials. And then the laser scans the area that you want to have the parts, as long as until the part is ready. And then you put the cake out of the printer and break out the parts of the cake and sandblast it. There you need to be a bit careful, because these parts are basically green parts. You don't have the mechanical strength that you would normally have with thermoplastic materials, but you can get them out, and afterwards you put it into the oven for a post-curing step. This is additional to the other market materials. And there, when you have plain parts, for example, testing specimen for HDT or so, you can just put it onto a PTFE plate. But if you have design technically more complex parts, you put it into a salt bath, and the salt just supports the part, because when you heat it up, it gets soft a bit, and with the salt it doesn't deform. And after the post-curing, you have a stiff part, depending on which material you are using, and have high mechanical properties and high thermal properties and chemical resistance, and the other advantages thermosetting material has.
And so it's very similar to like what you would see in like a carbon system or some of the other like um, liquid resin systems that are also using thermosets. They take them out of the printer, they put them in a salt bath, and then in that case, you're doing UV curing. In this case, you're doing another thermal step to
Mm-hmm.
kind of take it over over the edge and kind of cure those bonds. And so
Exactly.
with thermosets, I mean, it's sometimes confusing. I bet, like, I've always been confused in terms of like, not confused, but it's somewhat more challenging to find it's not necessarily straightforward to name the polymer, right? Like there's PA12 or PA11. Like you can define that in some of the um the thermoplastics, but um on the thermoset side, like there's a lot of different grades and how you cure it. Do you tend to typically focus on kind of rigid resins or stiff resin, stiff end parts, or are you looking at elastomers and other types of materials?
For now, our main focus is on more stiff parts because they are easier to handle. And yeah, I think flexible parts are quite good covered by the materials that are already on the market.
Mhm.
Um, our specialty comes when it comes to, for example, flame retardancy or UV stability. This is something that's not common on the market. And then with these properties, we can put in our material knowledge and adjust the mechanical properties, but only to a certain extent. For example, we will probably never be as good as a nylon regarding the flexibility or so. But yeah, you just need to know what you need for your part, and yeah, then we would have the ability to adjust our material to that kind.
And what markets are most interested in those sorts of properties?
Especially the transportation industry, for example, aerospace or um, bus manufacturers or train manufacturers. You have very high flame retardant properties, and we had the um, we've made some trials with our new flame retardant material, and yeah, got the good results for the European train um, for the train specification. So this was quite a happy day for us to get this good news.
And are there specific printers that are using or like that are um, kind of able to use the thermoset materials? It sounds like with the bed temperature, like you can go pretty low, like you don't need any special equipment to go in terms of temperature. But certainly some of the systems are more locked down than others. Have you found success with is there a specific kind of type of printer or company that you partner with on that front?
So in general, it just need to be an open printer that can handle these low temperatures. Right now we are working with a Prodways
Mm-hmm.
P1000 machine and a Fasoon HT252, and these work great with our materials, but have also at our partner companies tested some other open source printers, and this worked as good as with these other machines. As it is with SLS printing or with, I think, every 3D printer, you have to adjust um, the parameters for the printer every time you go to a new one, because you don't know how much the laser is worn out and so on. So you need some kind of adjustment in the beginning, but with the expertise we have with our printers now, we can just give some starting parameters, and then the adjustment process is much faster.
In previous calls we've had, I've seen the printer in the background. So how have you found kind of the experience of operating a system or seeing it run kind of helped with your understanding of the material and how to process it, and then subsequently how to help customers?
I don't get the question quite. Sorry.
Yeah, no, like, so how important is it to have the hands-on experience with the printer and seeing your materials run and seeing kind of parameter changes or different parts and how geometries that might come up with new formulations or new customer requests?
For us, it's necessary to have these expertise, because we have different functions. First, we need to formulate our new material, then we have to test it. And when we didn't have the expertise, then we didn't know if it's the problem of the formulation or it's a problem of the printing process. This is something we had to learn in the beginning, because we thought we would often have a bad formulation, but we just didn't know how to adjust the printer in the right way. And the other thing is, as there are not yet Thermoset materials for SLS printers, we need to talk to our potential customers, and we need to show them the benefits. And when they are ready to try the material, we need to get them our knowledge that they can print on their own. So it was quite important to get the knowledge in the first place. And right now we are spreading our knowledge to our potential customers.
And so as a material supplier and kind of working with your resins all the time, what's kind of the most common question that you get asked from an end user as you start to talk about thermosets and the capabilities of your systems?
That's a good question. I think the most asked question is, what are the differences in the printing process? Because most of the people we are talking with already have something in mind when it comes to thermoset materials, and they think they need a totally new printer for that, but they don't know that it's going to work also on mostly every open printer. So we first start with teaching them about the printing process, how we are doing it, what kind of life hacks we have for using our material. So yeah.
And what about the post-processing side? So does Tiger do a lot in post-processing or coating 3D printed parts? Is that kind of grouped into the additive manufacturing realm? Are you specifically targeting, hey, we know our coatings will work really good with SLS parts or other types of printed parts? Is that something that you found as well?
yeah, we've tested it several times on our parts, and this is one of our unique selling points, because it's very hard to coat thermoplastic material, but it's nearly easy to coat a thermoset material because the chemistry is similar. So you also get a chemical bond between the parts and the coating. So there you have one advantage of that. And we're currently working out some sample kits we want to send to our customers, where we also have powder coated parts in. And as we have seen on the Form Next last year, that especially the coated parts drew a lot of attention.
And what's the reason for, so it doesn't coat thermoplastic as well? Is that a temperature issue? Usually you don't have the temperature stability for powder coating to sink into the resin, or is it more chemistry?
It's actually both. You have a temperature issue because the substrate is degassing at some temperatures, or thermoplastic materials are start to melt or at least get soft and lose the shape. And the chemical issue is also that of the polarity of the material, it doesn't want to get coated. So, yeah.
And as SLS is one of many different printing technologies, are there other technologies that you're looking at from a coating perspective, also from your raw resin perspective as well, to explore and to expand into?
From our coating perspective, our colleagues are also working on coating other 3D printed parts as well to see how this works. And from our additive manufacturing perspective, we are still trying to get the SLS thing going. And afterwards, maybe we're looking at other markets as well.
All right, so we've talked a lot about SLS. Are there any other 3D printing technologies or projects that you're working on as well?
Yeah, actually, yes. We're currently working on composite-based additive manufacturing that Impossible Objects has developed. And we've started a development of a thermoset material to improve heat stability, UV resistance, and other characteristics as well. And this is a very interesting technology, I have to say. And we're looking forward how far our project will come.
And it's a kind of a nice fit, right? Because most composites, and like conventional composites, when you think of layups, already use a lot of thermoset materials, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so this was a convenient way to go with CBAM as well. So we'll see how this will work out.
Fantastic. And so kind of couple of last questions. So one is, as you look into the rest of 2022 or 2023, I've got my years wrong here, but what are you excited about? What's on your horizon from either new technology, new market, trade show that you're excited to kind of continue to work on and push forward?
Mm-hmm. I think the next one we are looking forward to is the AMAC in, I think, Las Vegas. My
Chicago.
colleague will
down the street.
Oh, bad mistake. My colleague will go there, and we are excited to see what kind of questions we get asked, and how much attention this new technology will draw. And in November, again, the Form Next. We have to be there because it's right around the corner. So this is also awesome. And regarding new technologies, actually, I'm not quite sure what will be released in this year. I'm more of the type that looks into the news and see, hey, wow, this is new, and then I start to deal with it. But proactively looking for that.
Awesome. And I know you're at this time also kind of doing a full-time additional degree in terms of your day job. So this may fit, but what's an interesting book or a book that's made an impact on you, that's been helpful for your professional career?
I think it's from Stephen R. Covey, the 7 Steps to Efficiency. I'm not sure what the English title is, but this works also for the private and for the business life. And it totally changed mine, to be honest, because I've stumbled upon it casually, and after I've read it, I started with this whole learning new stuff thing. So definitely a must read.
For sure. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining the show today. Excited to see what you guys are up to and continue to track your progress.
Thank you for the pleasant talk.
Be sure to check out our website, www.3degreescompany.com, for more content.